Another Ashes of Creation dev update just went by, so it's going to be another case of me diving way too deep into what we were shown. In this month's update, we got to see a lot of stuff, so there's a ton of things for me to dissect, and I'm super excited to jump into all of it. In this video, we're going to be going over the hybrid combat system that we were shown for Ashes of Creation. Since none of us can play Ashes of Creation right now, my main goal is to help you guys compare the combat to games that you are familiar with already, to get an idea of what to expect. Because let's be honest, combat in an MMORPG is a bit like love in a relationship. Even if everything else seems perfect, if you don't got love, it ain't gonna work. And it's a very fragile thing to get right. Before we go into it, I want to remind everybody though that this is a pre-alpha and the UI is not nearly finished yet, so anything you see on the UI side of things is just the very basic stuff. What we're looking at here in this video is basically the idea of the combat that Intrepid is presenting to us. Now firstly, Steven demonstrated that it's possible to swap between a tab target style and a reticle based aiming style with the press of a button, not unlike other MMORPGs currently on the market such as Guild Wars 2. It doesn't appear to change the nature of your skills though. Skills are either action based or tab target based. This can be sometimes changed by investing skill points and ranking up certain abilities, but their nature doesn't appear to change regardless of if you are in target-based mode or aim-based mode. These modes only seem to dictate how you select targets and aim your attacks. The tab targeting system that was shown is pretty straightforward. Like in games like World of Warcraft, you just right-click on an enemy and select them, and a small circle appears beneath their feet, indicating they are your target, or you can press tab to cycle through nearby targets instead. Now for the reticle-based system, we didn't get it demonstrated due to the UI not being completed yet, but the aiming-based system is supposed to highlight targets when you mouse over them while providing information on them, and it's planned that they outline them so you can visually see the target you are currently selecting based on where your reticle is. To give you an idea, this sounds very similar to how aim-based targeting works in Elder Scrolls Online, where a monster will be outlined or highlighted when your reticle is pointed over them. I'm curious how swapping between targeting styles will work with aimed-based only attacks, if there are any, and how precise the aim on certain attacks need to be, and how large the hitboxes are. Black Desert Online, which is an action-based game, utilizes an aim assist feature by default where your shots will go towards whatever general target you are aiming at. But if you turn off the aim assist, you will find it's a lot harder to hit targets, much like aiming shots are in New World's closed beta test. It's clear that in action-based environments with high mobile targets, choosing to use ranged attacks and ranged weapons is punished heavily due to the unpredictable movement of players, making melee weapons with their large conal swings for their hit detection vastly superior and easier to use. So I hope that Intrepid doesn't rely on aiming for too many ranged attacks, as it can severely gimp certain classes or raise the skill level required to a much higher height than intended for them. For me personally, I suck at aiming, that's why I play Reinhardt when I play Overwatch, and I can't imagine that too many MMORPG players overlap as pro first-person shooter players as well. The next question though is that if you are using tab-based combat and you suddenly start using a bow, would it automatically force out the reticle, and will all ranged attacks suddenly be relying on action-based aiming just as the melee swings are conal? Unfortunately, because we were only shown the melee weapons, we can't get any answers on that quite yet and can only theorize. And Steven did make it abundantly clear that they'll be testing the combat out to see what feels best. So I propose this question to you guys. Would you prefer auto attacks for ranged weapons like bows and crossbows to rely on your aim, or would you prefer some sort of auto aim feature, or do you think it's best to just let ranged attacks be tab target style instead of action style to remove the high skill requirement in using them? Moving on from that, we didn't see anything in the way of animation locking when it came to the basic attacks in this video. In the footage, we see Steven is strafing while using his basic sword attack. We have seen in other footage that certain mage and cleric spells do lock you in place, such as the jump fireball for the mage class, or channeled casting spells that put circles on the ground. But with the usage of a universal dodge roll in the pre-alpha testing, it was possible to break out of these animations. It seems like for the harder hitting and more impactful spells, there will be animation locking, adding some risk versus reward to the actions you take, but for the most part, we'll be very mobile and able to move seamlessly while attacking. Now, lack of animation locking on basic attacks gives more responsiveness to your character. It feels more alive because it's constantly replying to your input. At the same time though, it can sometimes lead to a game feeling a bit floaty, where everybody is just sliding everywhere with their attacks. Adding dodge rolls on top of that, and you can expect a lot of moving around and repositioning during AOC combat if it remains in its current state. However, we also need to take into account that the game will also feature collision detection between yourself, NPCs, and players, meaning you'll not need to worry about people running through you and making it feel all janky to land attacks. When you put all of this together, then it's very easy to compare Ashes of Creation's combat to what is currently available in Elder Scrolls Online. They both have seamless movement through most of the attacks, they both feature universal dodge rolls, they both feature a somewhat hybrid system of aiming and selecting targets, and they both have collision detection. However, it's important to remember that they are not exactly the same, and there are differences in even what we've seen so far, such as how the GCD is handled and the animation cancels. Ashes of Creation seems to tie in its attacks more with a cast time rather than the animation outright, so the insane amount of animation canceling learning required for ESO likely won't be present in Ashes, and the dodge roll seems to be used in AOC only to break out of the commitment of a long cast rather than like in ESO where it's often used to cast something which takes effect immediately and then break out of the casting animation so you can then cast something else very quickly. Now, if you haven't played ESO yet, what I just said might be confusing, but if you have, you guys kinda get what I'm saying, I think. TLDR, animation cancelling is a huge thing in ESO, but it likely won't be as major a part of combat in Ashes of Creation, at least from what we've seen thus far. Remember that what we've seen so far is pre-alpha, and Ashes has already gone through some massive changes in its combat. It's up to the testers and the feedback to help it come out of its cocoon as a beautiful butterfly. And alternatively, if you're super hardcore and you just want to start practicing already, it seems like ESO's combat is the closest thing, so go nuts. Continuing on with Ashes of Creation though, another side of animation locking auto attacks is that the mobs themselves appear to respect that same auto attack rule of using the cone to auto attack instead of tab target based, meaning you do have the opportunity to dodge auto attacks if you back up, but at the same time though, the auto attacks don't animation lock the enemies either. So you'll see the downsides this has, as when a monster starts winding up its attack, even if you move, it seems fully capable to just move with you. If the system stays like this, then it might be difficult to outskill monsters in PvE unless you rely on CC and kiting, as dodging a basic attack of something that can just constantly move and follow you while it's auto attacking is pretty damn hard. Compared to something like in New World, where every attack is completely tied to the animation of the attack and no other movement is allowed during that time, so once an enemy winds up an attack, you can predict exactly where it's going to go and dodge it. With this, it might feel a bit more like a tab targeting MMO, where the auto attack damage of NPCs is inevitable because they have an AI that locks onto you and they can just chase after you mid-animation for their auto attack swings. We can say at the very least though that the larger attacks of some mobs and bosses do animation lock them, as demonstrated in the 4K footage when we see Steven and the other pre-alpha testers fighting some of the raid bosses. Of course, with all the speculation, I cannot confirm if the auto attacks do lock into a certain direction or position when monsters are auto attacking, but I hope they are in some way restricted from movement, otherwise it would make it very hard to outskill these monsters, and I believe it was stated that it should be possible for you to beat things that are higher level than you if you play much better than them. Something like locked on auto attacks kind of feels like that always makes that impossible without the use of insane kiting and CC abilities. The last thing I want to point out and talk about though is the visual and audio combat feedback that we got shown, as this was by far my favorite part of the video and I think it got overlooked by most people. Now, each attack that Steven lands with his sword and each basic attack on himself releases this particle effect around the targets, indicating that they were hit. Sound is a great way for player feedback on their attacks, but when you have a ton of clustered targets, it's hard to tell what sound is showing you what target was hit. Now, Black Desert Online, for example, provides impact feedback with your attacks by putting this strange little glowing effect on the targets in their action combat, but it's kind of sloppy and you can't really track what is hitting what. In the demonstration we were given on this developer update, we saw that when Steven hits a target with a sword, or the bird creatures are hitting him with their basic attacks, a blue ring echoes out on all of the targets he hits, while at the same time, when he takes damage, the same impact ring appears around him, though the one around his character is a different color. I think this helps massively in clarifying that your attack landed on a target in an action-based system. That sort of feedback is very important, and a lot of players don't think about it, but you definitely notice it when it isn't there. We can see that this feedback is also a clear indication of the type of damage being sent out as well, as when he takes hits from the mushrooms, there's a splash effect on him, which I guess relates to the type of damage that the mushrooms are dealing. And similarly, if you watch the castle siege footage, you'll also see the impact of various spells illuminating different splash effects on the targets. Steven is taking hits from a staff and it's splashing out a red impact on himself, while Toast and Margaret's spells of fire, force, and lightning all show different impact particles on the target they are hitting. This clarity goes a long way in helping you learn and understand what's hitting you and what type of damage it is, etc. In combination with the audio feedback, it's shaping up to be really satisfying combat. The animations already at this stage, to me, look pretty damn clean and clear. So yeah, that's the state of the combat we're seeing so far. I personally think they are on the right track, but obviously we can't say for sure until we get our hands on it, and I'm excited to see the Alpha 1 players dig into it in a few months. Bonus points from the creepy Ash's girlfriend. When Steve swaps zones in this video, he automatically was given a quest into his quest log, so zone-wide quests seem like they're a thing. I spend way too much time looking at these videos. That's it for this video though. Let me know what you guys think of what we've seen so far in the comment section below, and what MMORPGs that you feel nailed the combat side of things the best. If you liked this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you can follow me on Twitch as well. I'm working on getting a proper setup to stream on Twitch more often, but thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great day. I am booping out.